How's it going, everyone? It's 603 Bass. I know I've talked about it a lot, but we're finally here where we get to do the rod arsenal video and go over all of the rods and reel combos that I own and the rhyme or reason as to why I have those specific models. I know I've brought this up many a time, and I apologize for the delay. Yet every time I went to go do it, something happened, or there was another rod on the way, so I was like, I'll just keep pushing off, taking the new rod. Well, at this point, I just got the last rod that I plan on getting for some time yesterday. So here we are. Now, probably a little confusing because the thumbnail's outside and we're back in the cave, but there's a lot of reasons for that, none of which you care about. So, without further ado, we're going to jump into it, and we're going to start with my pride and joy, my jig rod. Everybody knows, for those that have watched my videos, how much I absolutely love fishing a jig. And prior to this rod, which I got last year, all I did was I bought stock rods. So anything I can find off the shelf. For a while I was using St. Croix, but now I switched almost completely over to Lew's. This one was kind of at the same time I was transitioning all of my stock rods over to Lew's. I wanted something a little bit special to go with the Lew's Hypermag, so that's why I decided to go with my first custom built rod. What I have on it is the Lew's Hypermag. I think it's an 8.2 to 1 ratio. I know it's an 8 something, you'll have to forgive me, but everything will be down a little info thing on the bottom of the screen for anything that I miss. And this thing is nuts. It's like 5 ounces, I think. It's super light, very compact, reel still smooth as butter since the day I got it. And it pairs up really nicely for what I want to do. I am the type where I like to run just straight fluoro on my jig rod. Actually, on a lot of things. I don't like doing braid to leader. I tried it and just, my hook set style, my fishing style, I just wasn't a big fan. And I haven't really felt like I've been that hindered for anything other than my spinning setups where I need to do, braid to a fluoro leader. So, straight 15-pound fluorocarbon. What I'm using currently on this is Seaguar Abrasics. This is only one of 2 rods that I own. One purpose. I am a value fisherman, and everything that I have beyond this and my drop shot rod has multiple purposes. This was my baby. I fish a jig from ice in to ice out. Yeah, other way around. Ice out to ice in. So I wanted something special because it's the first rod I pick up every single time I go out. And again, I fish it from the beginning to the end of the season. So the rod itself is a North Fork blank. It's the X-Ray. Specifically, it's the 736-1. It's a fast action, medium heavy. It's 7'2". Some people say that I'm fishing a little bit of a little too spongy of a rod for what I personally do, and I typically only throw 3/8 ounce or ½ ounce jigs on this. So a ½ ounce jig with a trailer kind of pushes it close to its max rating at 3/4 ounces, but honestly, it's perfect for what I want to do. There's just enough spring in it that I can accurately pitch and flip, even from long distances, but there's plenty of backbone that if I want to horse something out of heavy cover, which I've done 1,000 times in my videos already, I can do it no problem. It is absolutely my favorite rod. Not necessarily because of the rod itself, but the whole combo, and it works perfect for what I want to do for jig fishing, especially, again, where that's my personal preferred thing. But that's my pride and joy. The Lew's Hypermag is so good, I'm actually going to be buying a second one this year to replace a few of my older reels. I don't need the high-speed ratio on them, but thankfully they have a few that aren't as high-speed. But this whole combo with line on it is less than 1 pound. It ended up coming in at 15 point something ounces. It was just a hair over 15 ounces for the reel, rod, line, and I think I even had a very light jig tied on. I'll have to go back and check out. But awesome, absolutely awesome setup. And again, reason why we're starting this is because it's only one of 2 specialty rods that I specifically use for one technique. All right, next up, my only other single purpose rod that I own, although I do tend to use it every once in a while, which is kind of funny because I have a Ned rig on here. Depending on where I'm going, if I only want to bring one spinning setup, but I don't necessarily want a drop shot, I'll bring my drop shot rod because I can make it work for other things, and I just love this thing so much. But this is supposed to be drop shot only. This is my Wicked Custom Rods custom rod that I had made from Wicked Custom Rods right here, based out of New Hampshire, by co-owners Will and John. Actually, if you can see, there's my 603 decal on there. I jokingly said to them we should make this my signature drop shot rod, and I don't know, maybe that'll be a thing. But this was, without a doubt, probably the most excited I've been about a single rod yet, because as close as the jig rod was, this one I really got to pick right down to every last component what I wanted it to be. Now, a lot of that was heavily guided by Will, because he was the sole owner at the time when we built this rod for me, but I knew what I wanted out of a drop shot rod because it's my second favorite thing to do outside of fishing a jig. I wanted something a little bit longer than usual, but still at that medium light, because even though I tend to have kind of a violent hook set, when I'm fishing a drop shot, I really just like to lean into it. So I wanted a slightly longer rod so I had more of that shock absorption, and I could kind of finesse them in a little bit better. So what we ended up with was a 7-foot 2-inch medium light rod. Off the top of my head, I can't remember all the exact components, but again, down the bottom of the video, you see all the details. It has, I paired it with the Team Lew's Custom Pro Speed Spin, which is their flagship reel that they have now for their spinning reels. And this thing is awesome. Everything I had prior to switching over to Lew's for spinning setups, all I had was the Fluger President, which for the price point is a phenomenal reel. You can't go wrong. But I wanted something special. I wanted something a lot nicer. And this thing has absolutely not disappointed. I caught a lot of big smallmouth on this. Even when we went to the St. Lawrence River, I caught a lot of fish specifically on this reel. And I was really happy with the performance of this. This is, again, my only other has one purpose dedicated rod. There might be a third that's technically in that. But the craftsmanship on these custom rods from Wicked Custom Rods is phenomenal. He's even got a little thing in there, and I wish I could turn it more, but my wall is in the way. So that's the best you're going to have to get. Sorry about that. Drop shot rod, second favorite thing to do. I wanted something really nice, so this was another thing I was willing to splurge on. And I wanted something that I was very specific on to better suit my style of fishing and what I was trying to get done. This gets the job done. All right, we're going to move along. We're going to finish up the spinning reels and rods because I only have 2 more combos. This is the Magnum Spinning Rod 2 from Lew's. It's the Team Lew's Custom Pro Speed Stick series, which is another one of their flagship brand, models. This is another one of my do-all rods. It's a 7-foot, move out of the way, yep, 7-foot medium heavy. This is like my Senko rod and Nico rig, whatever it is. As you can tell, do blade baits with it. Anything that I still want to be finesse, spinning stuff, light duty, but at the same time I want backbone, which is, why I bring up Senko at first. Sometimes in the dead heat of summer when I'm having a really bad day and I feel like I need to catch fish, I'll throw in a Wacky Rig Senko. And before I like to fish around, I always like throwing it right up against the wall of really tall vegetation, where it's like 4 or 5 feet and it just cuts off a straight line. And I'll throw it right at the face of that. Or sometimes if there's a little cutout, I'll throw it into that pocket. And more often than not, the fish will grab it and run into the weeds before I can get anything, before I can get the hook set and pull it out into open water. So having that little extra backbone, very helpful. And then I paired that with the Lew's Speed Spin Mach 2, which is another phenomenal reel. I think this one is $80 retail. This is what I first started with to go with the other one that I have in my drop shot rod. Phenomenal reel. You really can't beat that one for price to performance. Kind of like the Fluger President, but this one is definitely smoother. I get a little bit better control out of the braking system on this. Very happy with it. As you can tell, the knob is filthy. I've put a lot of time in on this reel. I put a lot of fish in the boat with this when we were up on the St. Lawrence as well as all over New Hampshire and even Mass. I absolutely love this. It's a great all-around do-all setup if you're not fishing anything too light. And even then, you can still get away with something pretty light, but this is more like the quarter-ounce stuffing up. If you want something, at least for my personal preference, a little bit lighter, anything less than quarter ounce, you want to go with something maybe like a medium or less. Medium heavy on this, it's a little much. So that's my kind of heavy do-all spinning reel setup. All right, last but not least for my spinning setups is another Team Lew's Custom Pro Speed Stick. This is the Dock Sniper model. It's a 7-foot medium, so everything I said about the last rod, I do the same thing with this, just on the lighter spectrum. And as you can see, I've got a little hair jig on there from Beast Coast. That's one of their new ones. It looks so good, especially with, don't look on the back, little swim bait on the back. And this is the thing that I'll primarily throw, like hair jigs, which I just started this year. Depending on where I'm going, if I'm going for largemouth, I'll throw it on the other rod with slightly heavier leader line, like 10-pound. Whereas where I was the other day, I was chasing smallies. So it's an 8-pound leader on this. and just a light duty hair jig, but certainly capable of catching bigger fish. But I wanted a more subtle presentation with this. Also paired with that same loose Mach 2 speed spin, what I didn't talk about, which is on all of my spinning reels, is my braid. Daiwa J braid. Phenomenal line. My buddy convinced me to switch to it late last year. Absolutely incredible. I was just happy to be using Power Pro. Just the normal brand Power Pro, not even the super slick stuff, for years. And he convinced me to go with this because he was casting way further than I could with really, really light stuff. And when I switched, I could go toe-to-toe with him. So big difference in overall casting distance that you can get with that line, especially when you're fishing like the 1/10 ounce Ned rigs, which is almost primarily what goes on this, but sometimes I'll throw a Demiki rig. It depends on what I'm doing. Again, it's my do-all stuff for the really light finesse stuff, like 1/4 ounce and less, especially Ned rigs where I like the 1/10 or even the 1/15 ounce Ned heads. So that's the last of my spinning setups, all my light duty finesse stuff. All right, let's get rid of one of the old goats. This is one of my original non-Walmart combos that I bought years ago. And if you look at this Shimano reel, it's seen better days. That's the Sitka, like the original Sitka, I believe. And it's paired to, I don't even know what this is anymore. I'm pretty sure it's like a Team Daiwa. It's a 7-foot medium rod. I just use it for crankbaits. Anything cranking wise, and sometimes depending where I'm going, I'll even throw light soft plastics on it, but that's kind of a rare thing. So this might be like one of the only other dedicated rods per se, but it does get quite a bit of different usage. Jerk baits, crankbaits, lipless cranks, man, I mean anything like moving with treble hooks, I didn't throw on this. And actually I have the matching red one. That's the Team Daiwa Ballistic, I think. This one is just a Team Daiwa. I don't even think it has a name on it. Nope, it's been a while since I've looked at that. For what I paid for these, I've gotten phenomenal value out of them. These are one of the first, both of these, I bought them the same summer from Tackle Supply Depot. They were on sale for like 40 bucks shipped. Couldn't pass it up when I was first expanding on my rod arsenal. I'm not using that one anymore. I just replaced it, so I'm not going to bring it up. I will talk about the rod that replaced it, though. This is next on the list to be replaced. I'm going to get another loose rod, but this Sitka is still going like a champ, even though I never cleaned it. It's due for servicing. This is a workhorse. It's been in my arsenal forever. Right now, it is actually the oldest rod that I own. So maybe get one more season out of it before I replace it. We'll see. Another Team Lose Custom Pro Speed Stick. This is the all-purpose casting. Lives up to its name. I do a bunch of different things with this. It's paired with the Shimano Casitas, which they don't even make anymore. This is another kind of an older reel that for now works, but I will eventually replace. It's a 6:3-to-1 with 12-pound fluorocarbon. I can do anything I want. So in this case, I happen to have a 3/4 ounce lipless bait on it. It works great for that, especially with this rod being a 7-foot medium. I actually use this temporarily as my go-to jig rod until the custom one with the North Fork blank came in. And it actually worked like really, really well. I was surprised given that it was only a medium. Even fishing that 1/2 ounce jig with a trailer on it, I was still able to horse fish out of heavy cover, like out of timber, with this rod and 15-pound line. Don't sell these loose rods short. They're actually a lot more powerful than you might think. I have been extremely impressed with it. But now what I can do with it, because I have a slightly heavier rod that's honestly better suited for the type of jig fishing that I do, this is like my baby jig setup. So if I'm going heavy on the jigs and I've got a 1/2 ounce setup on that, I can go with a 3/8 ounce setup on this for something a little bit slightly slower fall presentation, right? I can throw in a different trailer so I get a much slower fall. I can go lighter line so I can get it deeper, a little bit easier. If I'm fishing huge crankbaits, I can throw it on this with that lighter line, though it's not as light. I've got that balance between strength so I can bomb this huge honking thing, but it's not so heavy duty that I can't get it down deep. It is my do-all for like everything between like kind of heavy duty and kind of finesse. I mean, Texas rig, worms, you name it, man. You can do anything with this rod. It is legitimately the all-purpose rod. This thing is phenomenal. I've already put a ton of fish in the boat with this exact rod. I mean, the cork is all stained and everything. I put a ton of work in on this rod alone last year because I made it do a bit of everything. So, phenomenal rod. Definitely check that one out. Going with that, I love that rod so much about too. I continue to expand and replace a lot of old busted up rods I had last year that were missing eyelets and stuff. So I bought the exact same rod, but this time I put my Shimano Corrado on it. So it's that Team Lose Custom Pro Speed Stick, 7-foot medium, and this is another one where, you know, now I can specifically throw lighter jigs, or in this case, spider jigs, or Texas rig stuff, whether it be just a weightless Texas rig Senko or a Texas rig worm, doesn't matter. But, you know, now I've got 2 all-purpose rods. There's a lot of overlap with the kind of fishing I do and where I do it, where it pays to have that rod where I can have light duty jig, or I can have multiple Texas rig presentations, whether it be an 8-inch worm with a small slip bullet weight on it, and then a, you know, Texposed weightless Senko, so I can throw it up in the slop. Having those 2 just provides that much more versatility in what it is I'm trying to do, especially in the summer. Now, the only difference with this one too is that this is actually 15 pound. So if I'm really getting into kind of like some heavier crap, I've got the heavier line that can deal with it, especially if I'm getting like Texas rig worms when I'm throwing up against timber, just having that slightly heavier duty. I mean, that 15 pound Seaguar Brace does not break. I've had it come around rocks and some of the nastiest timber. It holds up. It gets frayed to heck, but still holds up great. So this is kind of like my do-all but slightly heavier duty setup where I really want to get into the thick stuff. All right, now we get into the more heavy duty stuff as I go along here. This is one of the new series from Lewis. It's their custom speed stick series, and this is the Magnum Bass Rod 2. It's a 7'2" medium heavy fast action. This is like gonna be my go-to thing for like chatterbaits, where you're kind of in that 1/2 ounce to 1 ounce range when you combo up both your chatterbait and the trailer on it, or belly-weighted swim baits, where this one's kind of lighter duty. It just made sense for me to throw this particular setup for lure and hook on this setup for the day that I was fishing and where I was fishing, what everything else I had tied on. It is paired to my old Daiwa Fuego. These Daiwa Fuegos were $100. They're really, really hard to beat. The only other ones that even come close, what I've experienced, is Shimano and Lewis. These things, they're good. This one specifically needs a little bit of work. I don't know why it's squealing as bad as it is, but it still casts a mile, so it's not too bad. This rod, really, really happy with. For anyone that watched that chatterbait video where I caught the one on the fire craw, it was on this. And it's got that perfect balance where you got a lot of backbone right up until about like the last third of the rod, and then it gets really whippy up here. So you can get pretty, I would say pretty accurate for what it is I'm trying to do with slightly heavier baits, but it's got horsepower to it. So when you lay into them, you get that power band in the back where they're not going anywhere. You know, you're not like feeling like the fish is overpowering you. You've got the finesse at the front for accurate casting, but you've got the power in the back to fight them in. Love this rod. It is really, really good balance again between accuracy and power. This is one of my go-tos moving forward this season. Let's switch it up a little bit because I know I said pretty much everything I do is using fluorocarbon. This is one of my braid setups. So this is actually going to be my frog setup, despite the fact that I have this gorgeous Buka bull shad on there. I actually got this at the New England Fishing Expo. It's one of this custom painted wake baits. This is the Magnum Heavy Cover. The heck is this? I know 7.6 Heavy. For the life of me, I can't remember everything because most of these are pretty new to me. This is a very new one. Another, the Team Lewis Custom Pro Speed Stick Series. Simple as that. Frog rod, and sometimes if I want to do a little flipping and pitching where I want braid for that instant feedback, even though I'm not a huge fan of it, but I can't deny that it's nice when you really lay into one with the braid and you hear it sing and you barely move the rod and you set the hook in. It's fun. So dual purpose. I have another rod with some like heavier duty line that's just straightforward that I can use for flipping and pitching if I just want to stick to a frog on this. But I like that versatility where if I'm not going to work the frog, I can just flip and pitch into heavy cover, and I've got something that I can really horse them out of the absolute thickest stuff. I'm not going to talk about that reel because that reel is garbage. All right, the only other braided line setup I have is another one of these new custom speed stick series from Lewis. It's the Magnum Bass Rod 2 yet again, so it's that 7.2 medium heavy. And it's paired with another Daiwa Fuego, just a newer model, and light duty braid. I believe this is just 30-pound Power Pro. I know there's a glide bait on here right now. I forget why I tied it on. I think I had something on my other rod that I would normally throw my glide bait on, but surprisingly, it actually works pretty good. This is supposed to be pretty much topwater and any other application where I feel like this specific rod with this line can work. This is something I would even tie on a lead or two if I felt inclined, depending on what I'm doing for the day. If I feel like I need that additional setup where I need the 6:3 to 1 speed ratio, because while it seems like I have a ton of rods, I don't really have a ton of rods, and there's a few techniques I like to do for the most part above anything else. Having that flexibility would allow me to have a ton of variants of one technique. So that's kind of why I like having that 6:3 to 1 and a rod action that works for a bunch of different size top waters. I can go pretty light, but I can go pretty heavy because the rod can handle either one. Even the light stuff, because it's got that slightly springy tip, I can cast it pretty accurately, but it's got backbone if I'm throwing something kind of heavy, and I don't have to worry about breaking the rod. Another good all-around setup. As you can tell, I'm big on versatility in what I buy. All right, coming down to the wire here, we got a few left. Yet another one of those new custom speed stick series from Lew's. This one's the Magnum Frog Rod. I believe I have 2 of these. It's a 7'2" heavy action. For the last 8 years, pretty much everything I was throwing for swim baits like this, where that's the Beast Coast Miyagi on a flashy swimmer that happened to lose its flashy. I was throwing it on a 7'2" medium heavy, and for something like this, that's all right. But I really wanted something a little bit longer and a slightly heavier action because I want to be able to horse it. I don't like throwing braid. I like throwing fluoro. So with that, you're not going to get quite as strong of a hook set because you have the stretch of fluorocarbon. So to combat that with what I like to throw and the things where I like to throw it and how far I cast, I felt before where I'd get a 100+ foot cast and something would bite it on it. I'd have to do like the Iaconelli hook set where I'd take 3 steps back into the boat and take the rod from like almost 6 o'clock back over to 3 o'clock so I felt like I could get a good hook set from that far. Don't have to do that quite as much with a slightly longer and stiffer rod. I've got more backbone and the power stays stiffer, more towards the top. You have a little less sponginess in the tip that I can send it home from a distance. It works really well with the way I like to fish, where I'm throwing swim baits like this. And this is actually one of the smaller soft body swim baits that I will throw kind of in this fashion. Again, this would be like sometimes like throwing a chatterbait with the Miyagi on it. It is a big profile. It is beefy. It's heavy, but the fish like it all the same. If I'm throwing a spinnerbait, or I'm throwing multiple different kinds of spinnerbaits with different trailers on it, those get heavy pretty fast. And it's not even the bait itself, it's the cast. When you're trying to send something a little over an ounce, it's, you want something that can really send it without where, you don't feel like you're losing too much power just from the softness of a slightly lower action rod. You know what I mean? Hopefully that kind of makes sense. I'm kind of rambling at this point. But this actually goes with my Lew's BB1 Pro Speed series. Phenomenal reel. Dude, $200. This thing has done it all for me. It is incredibly smooth. It's 6.4 to 1 ratio. So for me, that's like the Goldilocks ratio where you can still slow roll things where, you feel like you're slow rolling it and you're actually slow rolling it. But if you need to burn something back for any reason, you can do that without breaking your wrist. This is a workhorse reel. I feel like the new Super Duty is just a play on this. Man, it's just, I'm rambling now. Burley. I haven't had any issue with this whatsoever, and again, it's like my heavy duty setup. I even use this for flipping and pitching. Phenomenal reel. You can do pretty much anything with it. Highly recommend. All right, another one. It's the exact same setup. It's another Magnum Frog Rod, the BB1 Speed Spool. I happen to have a jackhammer on there with a little Strike King swim bait trailer. This is another one where I can throw the big swim baits on it or the big spinner baits, and I don't feel like I'm going to break the thing on the cast. So I just doubled down on that because I really like those type of moving baits. If I'm on a good spinner bait bite, then I can be on a good chatterbait bite, and I want to throw them both at the same time. Or even a really good swim bait bite, like swim jig with a swim bait trailer. And that's where like that other slightly less, well, that lighter duty one that I had that Kitech on, that would be good for the chatterbait because that tends to be the lightest of all the options I like to throw. And then this could be for the heavier chatterbait setup or my spinnerbait. All right, last but not least, and for anyone that follows me on social media and everything, you already saw this one. This is the newest one from Wicked Custom Rods, and this is my not so big boy swim bait rod. I was trying to determine what it was I wanted to do, and Will from Wicked Custom Rods, one of the co-owners, came to me and said, hey, I've got an idea for a swim bait rod that I want to build. Do you want me to build one for you at the same time? I said, yeah, absolutely. What are you thinking? And this ended up being a 1/2 ounce to 3 ounce swim bait rod. And at the time, I was like, I kind of want like a 3 to 8 ounce. But when I think to what I have, I mean, even that Buka thing is the heaviest thing I have. And I think it's only 3, maybe 4 ounces. Everything else is smaller than that. I don't need the big boy swim bait rod yet. Getting there. So this is perfect. It's another North Fork blank. It's the LMX series. It's the 806-1. It's a moderate heavy 8-foot rod. And I paired it with the Lew's Super Duty Wide Speed Spool. This is my workhorse. This is where I'm going to throw the bigger things like the Huddleston Deluxe 68 weedless. Or I'm going to throw, even some topwater baits. I got, what the heck was it? The Rivers of Seas, the S-Waver 200. That's like a big glide bait. My Buka. I can throw all sorts of things like that. I'm working on making my own glide baits just because I like to do everything I possibly can. I like to tinker. This can do everything. I haven't taken it out in the boat yet as of filming this because, again, I just got it yesterday. But I was futzing around with it in the backyard. And, yeah, this is what I've been missing. Like, when I was throwing this, I was throwing it on that red Daiwa rod. And that's rated up to 2 ounces. I don't own any other rod that's rated up to 2 ounces. I think the next one up is 1.5 ounces. And this alone is 2.5 ounces. So being able to cast it and feeling like I'm in control again was huge, and which is why I went with this. Phenomenal build quality on these rods. Does it to whatever color combination you want. Everybody knows my affinity for the color of blue. My boat's blue, my truck's blue, all my rods, the accents are blue. This thing is awesome, and I can't wait to throw it on that Super Duty. I've heard nothing but phenomenal things about these reels. I've been incredibly happy with everything else I've had from Lew's, so I have no reason to believe why this one won't work just as well. Going to throw this weekend, so wish me luck, and hopefully I get something on it. So that's going to wrap it up. That's on my rod arsenal in a nutshell. I know that people have been asking for that probably like 2 years. Like, one of the first things when I started the channel, actually almost 3 years ago, was, hey, when are you going to show us all your rods and reels? Just never got around to it for 1,000 reasons, and then I kept changing everything over, and I finally got to a point this year where I replaced the bulk of what I owned. Everything was new. I wasn't intending to do anything differently until this opportunity came up recently with Wicked Custom Rods to get one last rod added to the arsenal for the time being. So now as good a time as ever, and the arsenal isn't too big that it was too long of a video. Anything you're interested in seeing, video description below, especially go to lew's.com. You can check out all of their rods and reels there. Wicked Custom Rods, you can see what they have there as well for all their options. You can get in touch with them if you're curious about having something built custom to what it is that you need. But definitely check out Lew's, and maybe afterwards check out Wicked Custom Rods while you're at it. So thank you all for watching, guys. I greatly appreciate it. Hopefully you sat through the whole thing. And for those that did, thank you very much. I greatly appreciate it. Catch you in the next one.